Welcome to the Terrible Podcast with your hosts from SteelersDepot.com, where you can find all your latest and greatest Steelers news. It's Dave Bryan and Alex Kozora, always lit, talking Steelers.
And now, here's Dave and Alex.
Welcome to the Terrible Podcast, Season 15, Episode 140. He's Dave Bryan. I'm Alex Kozora, SteelersDepot.com. Thanks for being back with us this Friday, Steelers Nation. Dave, the Pittsburgh Steelers just wrapped up Week 1 of their OTA session. They'll be back on the practice field for their second week, starting next Tuesday. So, going to recap the week that was the Pittsburgh Steelers, really kicking off the 2025 season. Still football in shorts, but the building blocks for when the team reports to Latrobe and really gets underway come July and August.
Happy Friday. We are halfway through the OTA sessions now. So we got a little bit to talk about today and a couple of reports that surfaced on the interwebs and Twitter machine on Thursday afternoon. So we've got a little bit to keep us busy today, I think.
Rarely a dull moment in Pittsburgh, and thankfully some non-quarterback Aaron Rodgers related storylines here. This from ESPN's Adam Schefter yesterday afternoon or so, reporting that the Pittsburgh Steelers and Miami Dolphins have been in trade talks over tight end Jonnu Smith, who was with the Dolphins last year, had a career season with them. Smith, originally of the Tennessee Titans, played with New England Patriots and Atlanta Falcons. There are lots of Arthur Smith connections here, so I assume that's one reason why the teams have had some level of trade talks. Worth pointing out that Ray Fittipaldo of the Post-Gazette believes that this is more smoke than fire. He's not hearing much from the team side in terms of interest of Jonnu Smith. Wonders if this is a play for Smith to try to get a new contract. According to that Schefter report, Smith would prefer to stay in Miami, but he also wants a new contract coming off that big year for the Dolphins. So, Dave, Jonnu Smith, fact, fiction, what do you think?
First and foremost, I think it's somebody that we've easily linked to Arthur Smith once he arrived as a potential possibility before he did sign with Miami last year. Jonnu Smith has spent time with Arthur Smith in Tennessee in the early days, and also I think one season in Atlanta there. The Adam Schefter report specifically says the Dolphins have had trade discussions with the Pittsburgh Steelers about their lone Pro Bowl selection last season, tight end Jonnu Smith. Per league sources, those talks came after Smith expressed an interest in reworking his deal that is scheduled to pay him $4.8 million this season. With Smith seeking a new contract, Miami has sought a trade partner. Last season, Smith set a franchise record for a tight end in receptions, receiving yards, and touchdowns. Smith's preference, per sources, is to stay in Miami under a reworked deal. That certainly seems agent driven, and his agent, I believe, is Drew Rosenhaus. I believe Ray Fittipaldo did a good job of kind of, at least, laying a lot out there why it might be a little bit more smoke than just fire just yet. And it sounds like he would like to stay in Miami, but money talks, as they say, and I don't know where to put the probability on all this. I will say that if anything was to come out of all this, and if Miami does get in a situation where they are seriously looking at trading Jonnu Smith, that it probably would not happen for at least a few more days so that they can get past June 1st and they can lessen their dead money cap hits on Jonnu Smith because of the post June 1st stuff and all like that. So it's interesting that the Pittsburgh Steelers are mentioned specifically, I guess, in this report overall. So I would imagine that there have been, to some degree, I don't know if it's the Steelers calling the Dolphins or what, but there's enough here to at least talk about the plausibility and the probability of it happen. It would seem, though, that if they would have the Steelers would have to at least probably talk to Drew Rosenhaus beforehand, probably hammer out some sort of contract extension. I believe Jonnu Smith is under contract for only one more season, 2025, as it stands right now, and he would obviously be looking to earn a little bit more, probably a lot more than he is scheduled to earn this season with the Dolphins. So we'll see where this goes, but it is easy to connect the dots to Jonnu Smith to Arthur Smith, correct?
It is. And point well taken on the Schefter-Rosenhaus connection. Those guys are very close. We see Schefter consistently credit deal done by Drew Rosenhaus, but it's hard to believe that Rosenhaus said, Adam, just go make up some stuff about Pittsburgh talking to Jonnu Smith to help my client get a deal done. And usually when Schefter's tweeting something that specific, there's a good amount of smoke, if not some fire there. So we'll see. To outline the Smith and Smith connection, sounds like your favorite law firm, Arthur Smith and Jonnu Smith. Jonnu Smith drafted by the Tennessee Titans in 2017, where Arthur Smith was then the tight ends coach, and so Arthur Smith was Jonnu Smith's positional coach the first 2 years in Tennessee, then of course became his offensive coordinator. They parted ways after Arthur Smith was hired by the Falcons in 2021. Jonnu Smith went to the Patriots, and then in 2023, Arthur Smith traded for Jonnu Smith in a deal with New England, and then Jonnu Smith had his best season to date at that time in Atlanta, and then Jonnu Smith had his career year last year in Miami, 88 catches, 884 yards, and 8 touchdowns, making the Pro Bowl. Jonnu Smith has had a lot of complimentary things about Arthur Smith said in the past, said he's a great guy. Whenever he was traded to Atlanta in 2023, said he was super excited to reunite with Arthur Smith, said that Arthur was the reason why he was there and back in Atlanta. Arthur Smith has had nice things to say about Jonnu Smith as a run-after-catch, versatile player in the past. And so that's the easy dots to connect. I know Pittsburgh, it feels like, why need another tight end? But Arthur Smith loves his tight ends, and Pittsburgh may view this as not just a tight end, but an offensive weapon that can help this pass game. Obviously, there's still a big need at receiver and a big hole to fill, either internally or externally for George Pickens. Maybe Pittsburgh's wanting to broaden their horizons, knowing the receiver market might not be particularly strong.
Yeah, when you look at what's out there at wide receiver right now, we've gone over the names recently, and if you're wanting a tight end that can quasi, that's got more of a, I guess, wide receiver build, and you can do a lot of different things with him and spread him out. And we all know Arthur Smith loves multiple tight ends. And I guess the main pushback when people say, why another tight end? Well, anytime that you can upgrade the group that you have, you have to seriously look at it, and you could do worse with a top 3 tight end group of Pat Freiermuth, Jonnu Smith, and Darnell Washington there. So I think first and foremost, you look at it as, would you be improving your tight end group overall with the addition of Jonnu Smith? And I think the easy answer to that is yes. I haven't looked a lot at his blocking, but I think he's got some effort there. I think you can work with him there. Obviously, you would be getting him more because he is a pass catcher and a route runner, and you could do a lot of different things with him that way, more so than you would be looking at, oh man, this is a top tier blocker that we have here. But for a team that likes to use 13 personnel, even some 14 personnel, and for all we know with Arthur Smith, if he's collecting these things like what are those stones?
Is it Infinity Stones?
Oh, Infinity Stones, yeah. Could we see 05 personnel? I'm joking there, I think, but you had some good stats talking about usage and of tight end personnel for Arthur Smith. Why don't you go over those real quick?
And this came from a personnel study that I did courtesy of our Clayton Eckert, who'll provide the data. This was earlier this month, well before any of the Jonnu Smith news came out. And it was no surprise to see the personnel shift under Arthur Smith, Pittsburgh going from a 11 personnel, 3 receiver set heavy offense in prior years to being a multiple tight end heavy offense in Arthur Smith's first season. Pittsburgh, Dave, ranked second in the NFL in 13 personnel usage last season. That's 3 tight ends, 1 receiver sets at 16% overall. They were 6% a year before, so a big jump there, second in the NFL in usage, but they were only 21st in the NFL in success rate out of 13 personnel. So they were very heavy in 13 personnel, but not very effective, not very efficient. So the theory, if you added Jonnu Smith, would be we want to run a lot of 13 personnel. We want to run it better, though, run it more effectively and efficiently. If you have a top 3, as you said, of Freiermuth, Washington, and Smith, that is a really strong top 3. Last year it was Freiermuth, Washington, and then a mix between Michael Pruitt and Connor Heyward. That third guy didn't quite fit. Pruitt, a little bit of fit there because of the Smith connection coming over from Atlanta. Decent inline blocker, but Jonnu Smith can offer you a lot more. So that would be the theory to get a lot stronger out of 13 personnel.
I understand why Jonnu Smith wants a little bit more money. I think his APY right now is $4.2 million. How much more money does he want? And especially when you look at, he probably looks at, damn, Pat Freiermuth's over there with the Steelers earning $12.1 million APY right now. I find it hard to imagine that even if the Steelers gave Jonnu Smith more money, that they would push him equal to or above Pat Freiermuth overall. Now, from an economical standpoint, from a cap and cash perspective, the Steelers could easily get something done that way. Give Jonnu Smith more money. How much more money would obviously be a topic conversation, but the Steelers are not normally a team outside of, let's say, what happened earlier this offseason with DK Metcalf, of going outside and then dumping these, throwing huge piles of money at players, especially outside the organization. Could they do it? Yes, but I mean, how much more money is he actually would he be looking for? And once again, he's got a strong argument with the season that he had at Miami last year, but he is 30, 29, 30, 31, something like that years old. Money talks more than anything overall. But I mean, it would be a fit in the Steelers from the top 3 tight end perspective. Obviously has the history with Arthur Smith, and we'll just have to wait and see, I guess, how this turns out. I guess more specifically after June 1st. And you would think that if you were interested in a guy like Jonnu Smith at this time of year, you would like to get him in your organization by the start of mandatory mini camps getting underway. So it does kind of seem like a kind of a crucial time. And look, Miami, if they were to trade Jonnu Smith, what do they have at tight end? Not much. So this does seem strongly related to Jonnu wants more money from the Dolphins.
Right, and not a surprise coming off the big season that he had. I don't know if the Dolphins' shaky quarterback play last year, Tua missing time, influenced that at all. If a healthy Tua would mean they're going to use Jonnu Smith more and rely on their big play receivers more often, Tyreek Hill, Jalen Waddle, that's perhaps a calculation Miami's making. We're not going to pay this guy because we believe his production will decrease if we're fully healthy and 100% good to go for 2025. Yeah, I really don't know what it would be financially for Jonnu Smith. I'm looking at Mike Gesicki's contract. He signed this March at $8.5 million average yearly value. Similar age, similar production, similar usage as more athletic tight ends. Gesicki, different body type, but maybe that's what you would be looking for in terms of a contract baseline.
Yeah, I think that's probably fair overall, and the Steelers could obviously get there on that. I would think that they would want to have, as part of any type of deal that they would get done with him. He has void years on his contract past 2025. So if you're going to trade for Jonnu Smith and give him more money, I would think that you're doing so to probably extend him at least 2 more years. Now, when you get into the guaranteed money aspect, I would venture to imagine that a guy like Jonnu Smith would not get more than just a 2025 year guaranteed on top of it. That way the Steelers could get out of it as soon as 2026. But I think just from a financial aspect, cap and cash, and I think that's reasonable at around 8.5. I mean, hell, he would almost be doubling up what he's scheduled to earn with Miami this year. So it makes sense from several viewpoints when you look at it, as long as you're not getting into that 10, 12, 13 million range along those lines there. And I can't help but keep going back to the original Adam Schefter report, and he could just as easily say the Miami Dolphins are looking to, or having conversations with teams about trading Jonnu Smith, and that report probably stand on it and easily stand on its own because of him looking for a new deal. But the fact that he mentioned the Steelers specifically does kind of perk up your ears a little bit.
Absolutely, at least for our purposes. And again, the connection to Arthur Smith runs strong. Ross McCorkle had a great stat. In every year that Jonnu Smith and Arthur Smith have been together, that was 4 years in Tennessee and a year in Atlanta, so 5 years total. Jonnu Smith's yardage has increased every single season, topping at 582 yards, 50 receptions, 3 touchdowns in 2023 with Atlanta. That was even playing as a number 2 tight end to Kyle Pitts. Not huge numbers on the surface, but knowing the run heaviness of the Arthur Smith-based offense, still good production for number 2 tight end there, and a guy that would have comfort. And even though, yes, you would like to get him in by mandatory minicamp, Dave, I'm with you. If you didn't, because he is so familiar with the Arthur Smith offense, if he was here by training camp, he's going to be able to pick things up pretty quickly.
Sure. And, as we've stated a few times over the years, once mandatory minicamp ends for the Steelers, over the years, they have a long history of, I don't know what the average is at this point, but it's probably somewhere between 1.5 and 2.5 players end up on the initial 53-man roster come the start of the season that worked with the team by the time the team broke mandatory minicamp. So, if this thing went obviously beyond June 1st and after the team breaks mandatory minicamp, was that the 12th or whatever it is this month, 13th, whatever it is, it's still not out of the question the longer that he remains in contract, doesn't have a new contract with the Dolphins. But I once again, I can't help but go back and look at, man, the Dolphins look like they're okay cap situation wise. Their tight end room isn't great beyond Jonnu Smith. What would they do? But it all comes down to can they get something to hand? My gut, my heart of hearts makes me want to think that Miami will get something worked out with him. But once again, it's hard to overlook the fact that Adam Schefter specifically mentions the Steelers in his report. So I do believe that the Steelers have probably called on him to see where he's at. And if Jonnu can get more money out of the Steelers than he can after the Dolphins, this could come to fruition at some point.
Should note he'll turn 30 in August. And so from Miami's standpoint, and if you were to come to Pittsburgh and get an extension, you do wonder, okay, you got a 30-year-old tight end. Is he going to start to fall off? Are you paying for past production? I have not gone deep into Jonnu Smith's tape yet, but that may be a concern Miami has and a concern Pittsburgh should consider if they do trade for him. You're going to get a guy who's 30, and when does that fall off occur? Tight ends can play into their mid-30s, but typically that's more the exception than the rule, and so that would be one thought there on Jonnu Smith.
All right.
What would compensation be? You have to give him the contract extension, give him some decent money, not huge money, obviously. I'm thinking 5th round pick. Is that too high? Is that right?
I would think at most a 5th. That's where my head's at. Maybe maybe to push it through, you do one of those 7th round pick swaps or something like that. But I wouldn't think any more than a 5th, especially final year of his contract and the age that he is right now.
Well, I assume you'd be extending him if you're sign if you're making the trade for him.
Right. But
Otherwise,
it's still as is, though.
sure, but you'd have parameters probably worked out.
Right.
He's not going to accept that unless that deal's basically done. As I say, a fifth round even sounds a little too high. Maybe a six for Jonnu Smith, but we'll see what comes of that. Pittsburgh has plenty of draft capital or assumed draft capital to make that move for next season. I don't want to get cart before the horse here, Dave. If Jonnu Smith does come to Pittsburgh, though, whenever that may be, what happens to Connor Heyward? I think already Hayward's roster status and spot was on shaky ground with Darnell Parham added this offseason. DJ Thomas Jones brought in UDFA. Heyward last year. Good special teams guy, but only, 4 or 6 receptions last year. It felt like Arthur Smith didn't have a good idea of how to use him. If you bring Smith into the fold, you have 3 tight ends set in the stone right there in Frymouth, Washington, and Smith. They're likely to carry 4, so there's a chance, but it feels like Heyward will really be feeling the squeeze.
And look, you're not bringing in Jonnu Smith to play special teams, right?
Correct.
But it obviously would put Connor Heyward in a situation, not that he's not already in that situation with these rookie undrafted free agents of who can help you the most in the blocking and special teams aspect of their game and how much say will Danny Smith have in banging the table? If I got to have this guy, I don't care if he's a kicker, or what have you. How is this a guy that's going to make my special teams unit better? Now, when you got these younger tight ends, rookies on the roster competing against him, that sets up interesting competition, especially if those guys are, let's say, 2/3 of the special teams player that Connor Heyward is, but they're much better blockers. So it really does would even put Connor Heyward in an even more precarious position of battling for a roster spot there.
Yeah, so we'll see if it happens first of all, and then we'll talk about ramifications from there. But I mean, even if Smith doesn't get added, what are your thoughts? How do you feel about Connor Heyward's roster chances?
Yeah, it's like I said, it's a tough position that he's in already, even before Jonnu Smith. So he's got his work cut out for him.
Agreed. On the heels of that Jonnu Smith report from Adam Schefter, Fox Sports' Jordan Schultz had a broader tweet saying that Pittsburgh's had conversations with, quote, multiple teams about adding an offensive playmaker, did not mention receiver or tight end, did not mention the teams. Also said that Pittsburgh does not maybe have extreme urgency to get a deal done now, saying, there's still some time here before training camp, but Schultz with a broader view, acknowledging Pittsburgh looking for playmakers in the post-Pickens trade and in the roster construction that feels at least one weapon short.
I like Jordan Schultz. He's a try-hard guy. He does actually break some news and all like that. I do wonder how much of this is a piggyback onto, let me add something on to what, Adam Schefter and make it more broad. Feels like Groundhog Day. We're back to significant playmaker.
Oh, God. Oh, God. I just had a PTSD moment here.
Yeah. Is this just piggybacking onto Jonnu? Because Jonnu Smith is a playmaker, right?
But Schultz says multiple teams, so he's at least putting a different color on it and saying there are multiple teams Pittsburgh's discussing something with.
Look, we've talked how this team obviously could and should look at adding to their wide receiver depth chart, right? And a player more viable or more threatening than a Robert Woods type. So, yeah, I think it's not unfathomable what he reported using the verbiage and wording that he used.
I just lost my train of thought here.
Playmaker.
Here's my thought. Just kind of came back to me. It's hard to make this deal, I think, in May and June because no one wants to really trade right now. They want to go through their spring programs, their OTAs, their mandatory mini camp, make sure A, everyone's healthy, B, evaluate guys. If you're trading a veteran, maybe because of a young guy that you just drafted or brought in, but you want to see how he looks before you start making moves and start subtracting veteran talent. So think it's one of those things where it's just a tough time to get a deal done. How often do trades happen here in June? It's not that often. I think teams want to just kind of keep their powder dry, hold on to their guys, evaluate, and get through the spring healthy. So, Pittsburgh can certainly call and have those conversations and hopefully set the stage for something, but I don't know if a deal will happen for a little while longer.
Yeah, especially not until after June. I can almost guarantee you that no trade's going to happen coming to the Pittsburgh Steelers until after June 1st.
Which is in, 2 days, but point taken for the
right.
cap ramifications.
Right. But beyond that, yeah, I would think that you'd want to get through mandatory mini camps and your mandatory mini camps and get a good sense of what you're looking at, and put potentially even into training camp, because look, injuries happen and all like that, and all teams will say that we're not going to do anything unless it helps our side. And makes sense for us. I went back and listened to some comments from Terry Fontenot from the Falcons and Raheem Morris, and especially when it came to Kirk Cousins. We're not going to do anything unless it helps the Atlanta Falcons, first and foremost. And I would think teams I think you're right. I don't have an exact number on it, but how many deals around the NFL actually happened between the end of mandatory minicamp and the start of training camp?
Yeah, not a ton. So we'll see. I still, if I'm Pittsburgh, I'm still calling the Colts about Alec Pierce. This is a guy that's a playmaker. He's got size. He wins downfield. He's been productive throughout his Colts career. The volume hasn't been there, but it would fit fine in the Arthur Smith offense. He can block. If he's gonna get squeezed out when you have Pittman and Downs, if AD Mitchell's taking a step and that's gonna reduce Pierce's playing time, then that's a guy you should target. He's cheap. He's still pretty young. I think 26, maybe 27. That's a guy that I think Pittsburgh needs to be having conversations about.
All right, you've talked about him for quite a while now.
Yes, I like last year. So as you said, the Groundhog Day theme continues. All right, Dave, let's bring it back to Pittsburgh OTAs. They finished up their first week yesterday. They'll get back on the practice field Tuesday. Broderick Jones back at left tackle. Says he feels pretty comfortable back on the blind side.
I want to address the weight thing here, because I'm the one that said I'd like to see him kind of change that shape a little bit last year?
Did you? I give you credit if you do. I don't remember.
Yeah, and you said something along. Well, I forget exactly how the conversation, but one of the things that I had talked about coming out of last year is I'd like to see him kind of go through one of those transformations a little bit like Marcus Gilbert did several years ago, and all. And it's hard to tell by standing up talking to the media and some of these videos that you have out there, but I commend him for, if indeed this is correct, he's lost 20 pounds. And this all boils down to, this is a big, and we've talked about this, it's a big season for Broderick Jones, and the Steelers, when it comes to that fifth-year option, because after this season, the Steelers got to decide whether or not they're going to pick up the fifth-year option on Broderick Jones. As things sit right now, from what we've seen out of him, you're not picking that up right now. So the hope is obviously that him going over to what most called a more natural position for him at left tackle. And I think he's talked about having to flip things over in his head. And some players, it's just easier. They have no problems flipping sides. I go back to what Flozell Adams said several years ago upon joining the Steelers and having to go over to right tackle, and the muscle memory thing. And some of these guys they can easily do it in their head of just flipping sides from just a play standpoint. Some players just struggle with that overall. Maybe Broderick Jones is just a guy that is just gets it more and can get it in his head and the muscle memory aspect. But I mean, he has played quite a few snaps at right tackle at this point for the Steelers. But look, you go into this thing thinking that's going to be the fix when it comes to him. So we'll see. And you got all these players saying, it looks like he feels more comfortable over there on the left side, and yeah, he's losing weight, more athletic, blah blah blah. But as I like to say, Don't tell me about the labor pains. Show me the baby. I want to see the baby.
Sure, and this is the year for that. I thought the comment was interesting. I mean, A, it's good for Jones to get his weight down, to be more agile, to feel better. I'm all for that. Like you said, the Marcus Gilbert transformation. But he did say, quote, I wanted to come back a little leaner just because it gives me a chance to gain weight going into training camp and throughout the season instead of coming back heavy and then having to lose weight just to gain it back. So is the plan to then get his weight back up during the season? It sounds like what he wants to do. So I was a little kind of wondering what the approach there is with Broderick Jones.
Yeah, well, we'd have to just see how it progresses with him. But was he having problems controlling his weight last year? I guess or
Yeah, I wonder if
previous
he was
seasons.
right. Was he coming in at 325 and then getting heavier from there? He said last year he played in 325, 330 range. I mean, he says that he would come in last year heavy, then have to lose the weight and then gain it back. So I'm a little unclear kind of what the plan or approach is there. But anytime you can get in better shape and just feel better and more athletic, then that's a good thing. And it sounds like whatever plan he has in place will be more effective for him. So I'm all for that.
He just needs to play better. Period.
And left tackle could help that, but it is not the cure-all in itself. Certainly, there is a lot of work to do technically from an assignment focus standpoint, but these can all be positive steps. And although, as you kind of referenced, Jones has played to date more right tackle over his college and NFL career combined than he has left tackle, most of that coming in Pittsburgh, obviously, it doesn't necessarily make you more comfortable playing there if you're more natural on the left side, if your punch is more effective on that side. TJ Watt's talked about that. He can do moves on the left side that he can't pull off on the right side. Maybe that's the case with Broderick Jones. I always cite the late Tunjokin, who talked about just could not get comfortable at right tackle despite the reps, opportunity. He just was not as effective there. Just the punch wasn't as strong. The footwork wasn't as good. He just liked playing on the left side. And that's just how some guys are wired. As you said, some guys can do both. It's truly case by case. And so we'll see if going back to left tackle will help for Jones. What I think helps most of all, though, Dave, and I read about this for the weekend, and I think Zach Frazier even talked about this yesterday and I think I also mentioned this on the Wednesday show. It's just good for Jones to know I'm playing left tackle. Like, I'm not moving around. I'm not bouncing a little bit between left and right tackle as he did his first 2 years. I am the left tackle from the jump. Even if he was staying hypothetically at right tackle and that was set in stone, that would also be good for him to just be able to lock in and focus on one position and not have to think about, am I going to get some left tackle reps today? He's going to be just a left tackle. Put him in one position next to Say Malu, although Say Malu's not at OTAs right now, but whenever he gets there, have a veteran next to you adjacent. All of those things are positive. The offensive line, the front five, they know exactly where they're going to line up. Allows them to really settle in and focus and hone their craft instead of trying to play a couple different spots.
Yeah, here's to the 5 being the 5 and staying healthy all throughout this offseason and training camp and all. So everybody does know where they're going to be.
Exactly. All right, Dave, what else? Speaking of weight changes, to Marvin Leal apparently bulking up. I don't know if we have commentary on what his weight is at the way we do Broderick Jones, but Leal looks a whole lot bigger this year.
I mean, is that the main takeaway? I mean, I think that's what's coming out of beat reporters. It's hard to, I haven't seen many pictures of him yet, but as I've stated with him, I think even last year, man, I sure would like to see that guy put on some weight, some muscle and all like that. But it sounds like he's going, I just wish somebody would come right out and say, how much do you weigh?
Sure.
Because it is kind of hard to, you see these guys in pads and not in pads, but look, the tweenership of him has ended, it feels like, and should. He's either going to make it as a defensive lineman with the Steelers at this point, or he isn't. And it's a big offseason for him. You got a pretty full room at this point. You went out and re-signed, obviously, Loudermilk. You've got you went out and obviously drafted Derek Harmon. You've got Logan Lee. Hopefully he's put some more sand in his pants as well too. You've got Waya Black. I mean, this room's gotten pretty full pretty quick, and this is you've got a guy that in Leal that's struggled to keep himself on the practice field. He has flashed in some pass rushing stuff and all, going back to, as for last season in particular, but this guy's got to make it as a defensive lineman now, and he's got a tough road ahead of him this summer, I think.
Well, it's interesting, and I believe the beat guys who are there only get to watch certain parts of practice, or at the least only get to report on certain parts of practice. But Mark Cabali said he's only seen Leal work with the outside linebackers, and now you don't have TJ Watt there, so maybe that's a contributing factor. But it is a bit strange to hear Leal gain weight and then also play outside linebacker. It would feel the other way around. He was going to gain weight, you want to play D line. So I'm still honestly unclear what the plan is for him, where he's going to line up, and we're going into year 4 of his rookie contract.
Well, the more that you hear and see him, and look, we'll learn a lot more about this once training camp gets underway, right? Because I mean, you do have a pretty full outside linebacker room at this point with adding, and we'll see how much Watt does, if any, come the start of training camp. But you've added Sawyer during the draft. You got Jeremiah Moon in that room. You've got Julius Welshaw. You've got, who else is on that outside linebacker depth chart at this point?
Is it Leota that's there? Am I
Yeah.
saying the name right there? Aku Leota was on the practice squad, or was signed off. I think the Panthers practice squad last year, had a cup of coffee. But I mean, also D-line. I mean, it's deep at D-line and at edge. They've added to both. And so Leal's going to have an uphill climb either way. But yeah, it would sound like if he's gaining weight, it would be to play D-line. We're hearing that he's playing more still on his feet. I just feel like Pittsburgh has never had any idea what to do with the guy. What his best position was, how he fit into the defense. He's oscillated back and forth between D-line, outside linebacker, gaining weight, dropping weight, and also combine that with some injuries he's had, including last year's neck injury. He's never had time to really settle in and maximize his ability. And I think from a process standpoint, Pittsburgh's kind of screwed this up, and they took this lump of clay, and he's still a lump of clay.
The more you hear about him playing on his feet moving forward into this offseason, the more negative I think you have to think when it comes to his chances of making this team.
Really, shouldn't his best calling card at this point be versatility? Because he's not a starter at this point. So if I'm Pittsburgh, I'm saying he should become this Swiss Army knife, this potential tweener type. I mean, there's an argument to be made for that, but then of course you go back into the, okay, what is he? What is my weight?
Right.
And so I don't know. I think it's just too far gone for Pittsburgh to try to figure this thing out, and this may be the end for DeMarvin Leal.
Well, like I said, this is a tough road for him this summer.
Yeah. So that's the thought on DeMarvin Leal. What else, Dave? Darius Slay speaking to reporters, and this was, I think, from a local news report that noted that Slay's inviting out some of his new Steelers teammates, new Steelers defensive backs, to Houston to train this offseason. So Slay brought in to start and contribute and make an impact. Obviously, still had a really good year with the Eagles last year, despite being in his well into his 30s, but brought in as a veteran mentor, and clearly Pittsburgh feeling some of those dividends with Slay getting the guys together later this offseason.
You'll never get any pushback from me for hearing that kind of stuff. That's the kind of stuff that you expect to hear from a guy 13 years in the league. At this point, I'm all up for trying to get the guys together as much as you can during that 5 to 6 weeks between mandatory minicamp and the start of training camp. So kudos on him. It'd be interesting to see if all that comes to fruition, how many of those guys he can get together in Houston or wherever to try to work on stuff and communication and whatever they want to work on. So I'm hip hooray. I'm all for it.
You and me both. Alex Highsmith speaking about the absent TJ Watt, who did not attend the first week of OTAs. I imagine he will not be there next week either, as his contract situation remains outstanding. But Highsmith, optimistic a deal will get done. Highsmith also saying that he wants to be able to play both sides this year and working on that during OTAs, because he felt like teams were figuring them out last year, Pittsburgh's defensive. This is where Highsmith would align the right outside linebacker. Watt was the left outside linebacker guy. And so Highsmith wants to be able to play both spots this year.
I'm looking forward to the Instagram cut-ups of Alex Highsmith out in Wisconsin at that big Watt gym of them trying to work on things on opposite sides, as small as those clips might be. Look, Watt talked about it at the end of last season and going into this off season. It would be nice to be able to see these guys be able to switch sides on a moment's notice, and more so than they have in previous years. You got a guy in Herbig that already looks like he's somewhat comfortable in playing either side. And hopefully Jack Sawyer joins them out there as well too, because the tape with him primarily has been him at Ohio State being on the left side. So everybody needs to pick an opposite side to work on throughout this offseason. And I would imagine that we're going to see the four of those, maybe even more of them, up in Wisconsin or wherever, trying to get reps on, from an opposite side. So I think that does need to be done. I think they can, utilize that to their advantage so that teams aren't able to move, in a pre-snap situation. Um, uh, and that taxes communication. You have more opportunity of things to go wrong pre-snap when you're moving somebody over, those kind of things. So yeah, I'm all for it. I would like to see these guys be able to play opposite sides more than we have seen so far.
I've held a contrarian take to this, and I get the value of being able to move around and force tackles to prepare for both guys and mix things up. We saw that dividend in the Giants game last year where Watt got singled up and had that strip sack fumble to help win that game. But TJ Watt became a Hall of Famer playing one side. Alex Highsmith became a highly paid pass rusher playing one side. Playing on one side didn't stop Watt from being super productive in years past. Same with Highsmith. So is that really the issue? Because it wasn't the issue in 2022 or whatever, 2021 in years past when those guys were tearing it up.
I'm not sitting here saying it should be a 50-50 split, but you should have the ability to do it more than you have up until this point. And I think that should be the goal.
But it was effective playing just one side in 2021 or 2023. Why was the one side thing not an issue then, but an issue now? Everyone knew where TJ Watt was aligning in 2023 or 2021. He was the left side guy. Same with Highsmith on the right side. What's changed?
Maybe just how they're getting it, how teams are just more cognizant of it,
They're not more cognizant. TJ Watt, he's been playing on the left side for 6 years straight now.
Or a more concerted attempt, not cognizant, but just a more concerted attempt. Look, the more versatile that you can be, the more versatile you are.
I get that.
Once again, I'm not talking, 20, even 25% of the snaps, but I mean, you got to have the ability, should the need arise, to be able to do that.
No, I do understand. I do have some concerns.
It's obviously important enough that you get a guy like Alex Highsmith saying that, TJ Watt saying that.
Here's where I think
they need to work on opposite sides.
Well, here's where I think it comes from. I think anytime you go into a slump or a lull, which is what happened last year with the pass rush and with Highsmith and Watt in particular, you start looking to change some stuff. Like okay, something's not working here. We got to do something different. We need to have change for the sake of change because we're not getting a result. It's like a batter in baseball that's going through a slump. I got to change my stance. I got to do a leg kick. I got to change my hand placement. Sometimes slumps happen, and sometimes you just have to work through them and trust in the long run your talent, your production will win out the way that it has. And I think last year you talked about why did the production suffer? I think Watt was injured. He had the thumb injury. He had a knee. He had some stuff going on for him last season. The run defense wasn't good, and it waned down the stretch, and that does not help your pass rush at all. And you face some good teams and some good schemes that got the ball out quickly that didn't allow the rush to get home. Mahomes didn't hold the ball for longer than 2 seconds in that Christmas Day beat down of Pittsburgh last year. So, I think they probably will end up moving around more because it sounds like that's a stated goal. I just wonder about the effectiveness of it because it's not been an issue prior to 2024. And I do think when you get into a slump and, that's when you start needing to kind of tweak things and let's start changing some stuff. And I don't know if that's necessary to get these guys back to being the great players they can be.
Well, here's the thing though. It's important enough that they're talking about it.
Right, but like I said, is it truly effective, or is it just like, hey, we need to change something up because it felt like it wasn't working last year?
I mean, I think you got to have some versatility there, you know.
But you didn't need it in 2023 when TJ Watt. How many sacks did he have in 2023? You didn't need versatility in 2021 when Watt, had that crazy season. In 2021, 22 and a half sacks. 2023, 19 sacks. How many snaps on the right side did Watt play in those 2 years?
Not a lot.
And it didn't slow him down one bit. Teams knew where TJ Watt was going to be. I mean, they throw a bunch of they throw the kitchen sink at TJ Watt to slow him down, no question about that. But they're doing that in 2023. They were doing that in 2021. They've been doing that for most of his career. So I don't know. I don't want to harp on it too much, I guess. I mean, like you said, they're not going to probably switch a ton whenever it does happen in season. A couple different looks to keep offenses on their toes. I just wonder what the true benefit will be if they start moving around.
All right. Well, it's important enough that they're talking about. They're going to be working on it. So.
Yeah. All right, Dave, where to from here? Any other player comments? I think it was the bulk of the comments. Peyton Wilson wanted to become a more well-rounded linebacker, hoping that his role expands, and also talked about that guys like Jack Sawyer, Carson Bruner are looking good in their first full week with the team.
Always glad to hear people looking good in shorts, especially young guys.
What do you? Did I ask you before, Dave? I think I did. What are your expectations for Peyton Wilson in your number 2?
Yeah, I mean, I think he's got an opportunity to log even more snaps than last year. I think he's got an opportunity to be the guy with 2 linebackers on the field alongside Patrick Queen. We'll see what happens with Cole Holcomb. Obviously, moving out through the offseason. I think Mark Robinson's got an uphill battle. Malik Harrison's kind of a real wild card in that, where he's more of the kind of guy that you might put out there and run downs, but could you, if you get in more 1st and 10 run likely situations, could you see Queen and Malik Harrison out there? I guess the question is yes. In other kind of so type situations, could you see Wilson out there? I mean, I think Wilson more than anything has the opportunity to log a lot more snaps this year.
Over under 100 tackles for Peyton Wilson this year. He had 78 his rookie season.
Oh, I'm gonna say under, but he definitely has the opportunity to hit that mark.
Fair. I will take the over. 78 tackles last year, playing about half the snaps. I think he's going to see his role increase this year, really become more of a base and nickel guy, and he's going to hit triple digits.
All right.
Will Howard spoke to the media, Dave, and talked about his admitted rough first day of practice, where he felt like he just wasn't completely locked in. His footwork wasn't quite there. His accuracy wasn't where it needed to be, but then talked about getting better throughout the week and having a strong finish to the week during Wednesdays and Thursdays practice. And so I know all Will Howard news becomes very notable this time of year, the new rookie quarterback, and he seems to be happy with his progression and getting better and bouncing back from tough days.
Well, I mean, at least he's willing to admit that first day wasn't great, and he feels like he's improved beyond that. Obviously, haven't seen him go through any of that, and we'll definitely keep tabs on him going into training camp. Be interested to hear your daily or recap of the stats and everything that go. What's the team that even had someone with the Browns? Browns even had OTA passing stats.
They did, of all the 4 quarterbacks. Not yardage, though, so they got to step it up over there in Cleveland. We have yardage in Pittsburgh, at least, but yeah, I forget. I think Schefter had some good numbers. Also, I saw a graphic of Will Howard OTA stats going around.
Somebody just made that up.
Yeah, I can't 100% say that's wrong, obviously. I don't know the exact origin, but I'm like 98% sure that is totally fake and not legitimate numbers there for Will Howard.
Yeah, I would agree there. I think somebody's just trolling there.
Yeah, getting some easy clicks out of that. But on Howard, it's as you said, it's good for him to be able to acknowledge, like, hey, I wasn't good this day. This is where I needed to get better. This is where I got better. I think being able to self-reflect, self-evaluate, self-critique is really important of any profession, honestly, but certainly the profession of football, being a football player in the NFL. And so that's good to hear from Will Howard.
Yeah, absolutely. Look forward to seeing what happens with him the rest of the summer.
Any other commentary from any other players? I'm just trying to think back. Zach Frazier didn't have a whole lot to say. He never does. A true offensive lineman who just puts his head down and works. Anybody else, Dave?
What did we mention anybody else in our pre-draft discussion? Pre-podcast production meeting.
I don't believe so. Derek Carmen, happy to have Cam Heyward as a mentor. Likes the D-line room, a young guy like Benton who can relate to him, an old head like Heyward who can show him the way. So far, so good on Derek Carmen.
All right. I'm trying to think if anything else relevant came out of really OTAs. Did you see Cordell Patterson at all?
I didn't. I wasn't really looking for him, but fair point. And you wonder about his status. I know I had that article defending him just to play devil's advocate, but would the team sit there and say, Cordell, I bet you just stay at home for a little bit. Let's wait this thing out. I wonder if that's maybe something going on there with him.
Now, I think there was a report one of these days. Was it even yesterday that Jaylen Warren may not have been there for whatever reason?
Yeah, I did see that. I don't believe Warren was there for the last practice this week, but he was there the first couple days.
All right. What do you think about Alex Highsmith saying he's confident that a deal gets done with TJ Watt?
I mean, I do think a deal gets done. I think it'll happen late in the process, post-training camp like it did in 2021. So I think it'll be very similar to what happened on Watt's last contract, where this thing gets drawn out and takes longer than anyone would like. But I think with the market heating up, it's put Pittsburgh and Watt in that position to now have to really hammer this contract out. What should have been, I think, an easy deal has gotten a lot more complicated.
Here's the thing. People are going to say, trade him. They're not trading TJ Watt, right?
No.
The cash, everything says that a deal's going to get done there. There's no reason to think otherwise outside of TJ Watt sustaining some sort of an injury. There's absolutely no reason to think that come week one of the regular season that they won't have a new deal done with TJ Watt. Flat out. You can suggest that the team trade him all you want, but I don't see that happening. There's nothing that you could say at this point that would make me even fathom the fact that the Steelers would trade TJ Watt this offseason. Everything points to a deal getting done and has for a while. They'll get it worked out. Should they have had it worked out by now? That's one of the things that we talked about earlier in the offseason. Why didn't they? You have the cash available, you have the cap space available. You knew that this was going to be on the table. Why didn't you get this done? Is this an escrow? Is this a cash flow thing about escrow? Who knows about that aspect of it. But the longer that they wait, especially we'll see what happens with Trey Hendrickson, with Michael Parsons. Who's the Lions? Aiden Hutchinson. I mean, you could definitely get into a tough situation where you're even above $40 million come time.
I was just going to ask you, predict the average yearly value of a Watt extension, believing that it will get done.
I mean, just look at where Myles Garrett is right now. And once again, it's hard to imagine TJ Watt settling for anything less than $40 million as it sits right now, to be quite honest with you.
So give me the number.
I think you could see this thing around 42.
Okay, I will say 40.5. I think it'll come in right above Myles Garrett. I think that's where Watt wants to be. I think he wants to surpass Garrett, and so he'll do one of those things that's very classic contract where you just edge out the guy that got paid.
Well, look, if you get it done right 5 minutes after we're off the show, I agree with you, 40.5. But once again, the longer that this takes, and if Micah or Hutchinson or hard to imagine the Bengals getting up that high, but Hendrickson's got a good argument for sure. If this thing gets done, but before any of those others get to the altar, I agree with you. Yeah, probably 40.5. But the longer it takes, if some of these other guys top Myles Garrett, then Watt's going to want more than that.
That's true, and I think Parsons will beat Garrett's number. I don't think Hendrickson will. Hutchinson, I don't know if he will. Might be close. I think Parsons will beat Garrett's number, though.
if I'm Hutchinson, injury and all aside, man, I'm angling to top Garrett.
Oh, sure,
Especially,
you're definitely angling, but will you get it?
I
Push
think he
comes to
could.
shove. He could. I think maybe he would come in right below that. He would get who's second right now? Is it Daniil Hunter? I keep forgetting
Yeah,
Daniil Hunter got
there's
paid this offseason.
quite a gap as far as APY goes. Now, look, there's more than things than just the APY.
Sure.
There's the cash flow and guaranteed money and all like that. But usually, when you look at these things overall, they usually check more than just one box.
Yeah, just to simplify the conversation, to put that one nice, neat number. You're right, devil in the details of all these contracts. But we'll see on TJ Watt. Both thinking a deal will get done, just about when and how much. Some other OTA loose ends, Dave. Markabali here's the Cameron Johnson quote, booming the hell out of the ball in OTA. So good that he's healthy. We've followed along his rehab, him punting and running. He's shown some clips earlier this offseason. I know that booming the hell out of the ball is kind of the very cliche comment to make for any punter, but sounds like everything's going well with Cameron Johnson, his recovery, as he may battle Corliss Waitman this summer for the job.
Good. Just don't push him. Just let him go at his own course and let him do as much as he feels that he can do. And that's why you have a second punter in there at this point. That it behooves you to carry Corliss Waitman throughout all of the offseason to give to not push Cameron Johnston. So it is good. I know he's got clips with his son and all like that. And yeah, that's you couldn't ask for anything better in late May, early June about a guy that you went out and purposely got free agency a year ago to make a difference, who's sustained a serious knee injury.
Do you view this punting situation as a true camp battle, or is this, if Johnson is healthy, he takes the job because they paid him, he was supposed to be the guy, and they're not going to cut him if he's healthy?
I mean, obviously he's got to earn it. He can't go out. I mean, it's his job to lose, if that's what you're asking.
Okay, so you think if he's healthy, like, is it a true battle between Waitman and Johnson where best man wins, or is it Johnson has to really struggle to not make the team?
It feels like Johnston really has to struggle to
Okay.
not make it.
All right, fair enough. Joey Porter Jr. speaking this week as well, and he's got some complaints about the officials. Believes the cornerbacks treated unfairly, that receivers get away with a bunch of stuff and corners don't. Porter would like to have more refs on the field. That is his solution to it for a guy that had a bunch of penalties and they came in bunches last year. Of course, that Bengals game with 6 of them. So Porter can offer solutions, but the real solution is to play cleaner and cut down on those penalties.
I think if I'm him, I want fewer.
Yeah, like that 0 refs on the field. Be my goal.
Yeah. Look, the whole clutching thing, and yeah, we've talked about this several times. It's easy to break these down into games when it comes to him. Most of his penalties came in that one game against, who was it?
The Bengals.
The Bengals. He's just got a clean look. I was impressed with the tackling, and the ability and all like that. He knows it at this point. He just needs to play cleaner. Period.
And if he does that, he's a really good corner.
Yeah. If he plays cleaner, doesn't get these PIs or holding calls or anything along those lines, it'll instantly make him that much better. Because he had some nice pass breakups. He was, some nice cuts up underneath and getting into some balls. I mean, there was a lot to like about his game and development last season, other than the penalties. And if he just cleans that up, I think he'll be in good shape. And this is another guy that's angling towards this time next offseason. Got a good chance of talking about him getting an extension and potentially maybe even breaking into that top 5 in cornerbacks APY around the league.
With the right kind of year, he could. Just cut down on the penalties. Don't panic when the ball's in the air. Trust your technique. Utilize your length, and you'll be good. Do that. Get a couple of extra interceptions, and you'll have a Pro Bowl type season. I think Porter's had a couple of good years in Pittsburgh. I think the penalties are obviously an eyesore, but I don't want to let that detract from his overall play in totality. He's faced number 1 receivers routinely, allowed 1 touchdown in 2 years, had some really difficult matchups, and really held his own. So I think he's a good player. That if he does a couple more things correct, he'll become a great player.
Yeah, look, I mean, you can foresee him having an even better season than last year. It doesn't take a lot of imagination to now what that looks like. Obviously, yeah, you would like to see more pass breakups, more takeaways, less penalties. But if he does that, along with continues to develop a better as a tackler, and once again, I thought, I mean, even the play that he was injured on against Derek Henry, at least he's got the want to come up and try to make that. Didn't he say something about his dad said something about what are you doing? You know, he credits his dad basically for helping improve his tackling. Uh, there's no reason to think that he won't take jumps in every aspect of his game based on what we saw last year.
We'll see how he works with Jared Alexander, who I know he worked with, or at least was kind of in the room with 2 years ago, his rookie season. It did feel like Grady Brown had a good relationship with Porter, but you could sit there and say they never got the penalty issue truly solved. Maybe Alexander can better do that, so that'll be important for him. But yeah, we're in agreement on Joey Porter Jr. Anything else from anybody else at OTAs, Dave, that you wanted to mention?
Not that I can see here.
You wanted to have a discussion about Joe Corey and Andrew Brandt, two financial whiz. Brandt, longtime former NFL executive with the Packers. Corey, former NFL agent. Two guys trusted, respected, really level-headed when it comes to all things financial, contractual on the NFL side. So what did they have to say, Dave? What do you want to talk about?
Just and we spent a lot of time talking about cash and cap and all like that recently, and I know that a lot of our listeners don't really give a a hoot about that, but we have talked about recent comments made by Roger Goodell as it relates to integrity of the salary cap and how they might be looking at that. And I even said, look, I'm not an economics major. I know a lot about the cap and cash system as is, and just trying to toss around ideas of how they might try to restore some integrity to the salary cap system. I think one thing that Joe Corey wrote out here, and it makes a little bit of sense here. The ability to carry over salary cap room is a huge benefit to teams, and in turn, players. All teams would be working under, let's say this year, $279.2 million salary cap. Without it, the main reason the 49ers have such a large adjusted salary cap number this year is they're carrying over $50 million in cap space from 2024. I believe the Browns were another team that carried over a huge amount of salary cap space. And obviously, when you carry over salary cap space to future years based on cash versus cap, and all like that, that could be kind of viewed ways of already loosening up what is viewed as a soft cap as far as caps around the various leagues go. So I think Joe Corey makes a good point here is, could you limit the amount of salary cap space that teams carry over, or percentage, or what have you, or put a limit on how, let's say teams, what you want to encourage is teams spending more to the
Mm-hmm.
cap every year so that it's not loosened up on the back year, and you don't have these teams pushing these exorbitant amount of cap space numbers over to the to future years. And I think he makes a good point there. So I think that's one way to look at this overall, as where you can kind of, I guess, harden up a soft cap type situation. So that does make a lot of sense there. Now you'll get the pushback from the NFLPA says anything that's going to result in players not earning more cash in a single year, we're not for, overall.
Mm-hmm.
But I think this is definitely one area to look at overall that makes a lot of sense. Andrew Brandt has an article up on SI talking about lost in reports from the meetings last week about failed ban on the tush push, blah, blah, blah. Was Commissioner Roger Goodell sounded foreboding to the salary cap as we know it. and to the NFLPA. He says Goodell called in question the integrity of the cap, specifically calling out teams such as the Eagles and the Rams for the common use of dummy years that automatically void. He goes into explaining what void years are. Allows teams to prorate the signing bonus into those phantom years. It is a relatively simple tactic to allow for less cap loading in present while pushing cap loading into those void years. He says it sounds like Goodell, with some support from some owners, is hinting at a proposed revolution of cap mechanics that have been in place since the cap was introduced in 93. Proration has been a major feature of the NFL cap management. The signing bonuses, the future option bonus, as are prorated for cap purposes, allowing teams to pay out more cash than cap. Anyway, as he said many times, for reasons above, the NFL does not have a hard cap. Proration allows for a soft cap. Interesting the coming cap in college sports. For the House settlement will be a hard cap with no proration allowed. He says Goodell is hinting that in the next CBA negotiations, there may be a push from ownership for a hard or harder cap. As for NFLPA opposition, well, that has never really stopped the NFL before, so stay tuned. And once again, I could foresee something along these lines, maybe a mix of what he's kind of hinting at, what Joel Corey's talking about, as I don't think it's hard to imagine the NFL going to a complete hard cap situation, but might they try to harden up the soft cap that they have now, and specifically through the use of not allowing teams to carry over exorbitant amount of cap space, and especially during 3-year spans on top of it. Okay, if you want to push cap money ahead in a 3-year span, fine, but come the end of that 3-year period, might there be more stipulation on spending more to the cap in those 3 years, and then at the end of the 3-year period, whatever cap space you have left, bye-bye, it's gone.
That's true. That's fair. A lot of discussions to be had, I'm sure. I wonder what the void years, I get from the owner's standpoint why they would want it to go away. But if you're a general manager, I think you want those void years to stay because so many teams have used those as an out to get out of sticky financial situations or be able to stretch themselves more in a year where they're paying a quarterback a bunch of money or they're in win now mode and they're trying to build up assets. And so, would owners may have some support for it, but with the teams at large want to see these void years be modified or go away, that would give them less flexibility to maneuver and make it harder to win.
Well, I think from the NFLPA perspective, they love it, right? Because they want their players to get paid now, and as Wimpy would say, I'd gladly pay for a cheeseburger today or on Tuesday for a cheeseburger today. They anything that gets pushed that means less money now in players' pocket, they're going to be against. So I would imagine the smaller market teams are the ones that are saying, "Hey, let's try to harden up this cap a little bit so that teams are forced more to spend more cash now."
Sure, and teams like Pittsburgh say get rid of the void years because they don't use the void years, and so let's go level the playing field. But I wonder where the support is coming from. If the union's not for it, and if at least general managers are telling their owners like, "Hey, if we do this, it's going to make it a lot harder for us to navigate. Like we're facing a bad cap situation upcoming. We plan on using void years to be able to help navigate that. We're going to be in some trouble. We're going to start cutting some guys or not be able to make a free agent signing." Would owners sit there and say, "You know what? Let's actually keep our hands off void years because that's a pretty good tool in our tool belt to get out of messy situations." I just wonder how the unintended consequences of owners potentially trying to push for the banning of void years.
Well, look, once again, I don't want to spend a lot of time on this, but the fact that Roger Goodell mentions the integrity of the salary cap perks up a lot of ears within that. Is this going to happen next season? No. Could something happen before the next CBA is even or before this current CBA is up? probably not. Unless they get a huge push, I guess, in some of those bylaw or whatever, those off-season meetings and all like that. What I really would be more interested more than anything at this point is to hear more opinions from the Joel Coreys and the Andrew Brandts as far as the economics and ways to make this better. And then really more so, I would like to hear Roger Goodell talk more specifically about what he means about the integrity, where his head at is in this and why he views the integrity of the salary cap needing to be addressed more, even though it's maybe a lot of common sense, but a lot of fans on the outside don't understand what he means. And even though I do to some degree, I would like it explained more to me like I'm 5 years old. And so should reporters around the league that cover the NFL. I just would like to hear him press more of what does he mean when he talks about the integrity of the salary cap needs to be addressed more or addressed when he speaks in these next 6 to 8, 12 months or what have you.
I do think there'll be change if Goodell is hinting at it as pretty strongly as he's done a couple times now. Like I said, he did during the Super Bowl week as well, and now post these owners' meetings, something will change. But what that something is up for debate, and I think it could happen soon. The NFL is going to probably push for an 18-game season next year, so there's going to be some CBA discussion modification. And if you're talking that, if you're Goodell, that's a good time to talk about tweaking the salary cap situation some too. So I wonder if there'll be some maybe minor tweaks then with some bigger changes to come when the new CBA gets set for 2030. The one thing I think that could be on the chopping block, and Jason Fitzgerald from Over the Cap mentioned this, was the June 1st. What do you want to call the June 1st deadline, the June 1st proration? But as we talked about with Kirk Cousins, with Jonnu Smith, wait till June 1st, and then you can cut these guys, spread out the cap relief. Who is that good for? It's good for the teams, but the players have to hate that because it strings these guys along till June 1st and until their futures can kind of be decided. So if you're the NFLPA, you're saying, let's get rid of that deadline because that's not good for our players.
Right. You want the player to be able to hit the market as soon as possible.
Yeah, not in June.
Right.
So I think that's going to be something the NFLPA could come in and say, let's tweak that. You want to, do something with void years? Let's do something with the June 1st deadline.
Right. But once again, I think we're a long way away from them solving the problem. Obviously it's a hot button because Goodell mentioned it, but even they are in the early stages right now of just, it starts with basically the commissioners. Here's what you don't want to happen. You don't want a gap to widen up between small market and big market teams. Even though you have a cap. You don't want
it's a soft
you
cap.
don't want right. You don't want teams with stronger cash flows to have an advantage.
Could you do something similar? And this is probably too radical of a suggestion. Certainly not something until a whole new CBA were to get worked out. But could you do an NBA model that I'm even very fuzzy on details? But there's a soft apron. There's kind of multiple layers and levels to the cap, and the higher you go up, the more penalties, restrictions you receive as a team.
Well, here's the thing. You know more about the NBA cap than I do.
I'm not sure about that.
I honestly have not even studied that, and I barely know the mechanisms when it comes to the NHL. I just, because of the way the CBA and because of the way I'm constantly learning more things about contracts and even the current cap system as it is and mechanisms and all like that. I've done this for a long time studying this, when it comes to the NFL. So I know virtually nothing about the NBA system.
Yeah, NBA whole another ball of wax there. Very complicated, but interesting model. All right, Dave, anything else to talk about on the subject?
No, I just wanted to get that out there. Just some of the alternative or some of the, I guess maybe ideas of solutions to making the integrity of the cap better based on what those two said.
Every time you say integrity, I think of the South Park episode of Randy Tegrity Farm. So it makes me laugh every time you say it. So that's why I let these conversations go on because they bring a smile to my face.
All right. Some
Dave.
emails here.
Let's get some emails and close out today's show.
All right. James Constantino writes in, I thought The end of May would be a good time to begin to air some grievances, so I'll try to make these into questions. He says, can we admit that Freiermuth has been underwhelming to this point? He's a liability as a blocker and is completely underused as a receiver. He made a few plays at Penn State and was an emotional pick like James Conner and Kenny Pickett. Why couldn't they have been emotional about Marino or Darrelle Revis? Number two, what are your thoughts on Justin Fields for the next 2 years as a Jet? The Steelers better be right about Justin Fields. You had a high pedigree first-round pick in your quarterback room, and you let him leave over money that you have to spend. He says, I won't root against the guy, but Tomlin and Khan kind of have to. All right, Pat Freiermuth. Underwhelming to this point, I guess, based on pedigree and, I guess subsequent contract that he was given. First and foremost, it was a fair market value for where he was at and a couple of seasons that he's coming off of. So I think he's at a fair market value at what he's earning, so to speak. But as a whole, has he been underwhelming as an all-around player?
I wouldn't go that far. And if the contention is Pittsburgh has not used him enough, then the underwhelming aspect would be on the team, not the player. I think Freiermuth has been just fine. A fine player, fine production, a fine contract. I don't have any, it's not been amazing. It's not been terrible or anything. It's just kind of been a middle ground, above average across the board. I mean, I hear you as a blocker. He's never progressed, never going to really be that guy. I think he's been sure-handed. I think he has made some plays. I think he was utilized a bit more than people give him credit for last year. Remember, this is a guy that had to play in some of the worst Pittsburgh Steelers passing offenses in recent years in 2022 and 2023. And so that's not doing him any favors, and then played in a run-heavy offense last year under Arthur Smith. So, yeah, I'm not going to laud this guy as some sort of amazing top 5 tight end or anything like that, but I think he's a good player. It's a good contract. It is just good and fine all the way around.
With another team in the right system and the right quarterback, could Pat Freiermuth catch 80, 85 passes in a season?
Sure. Yes.
I agree. And as far look, is he ever going? He's at his ceiling as far as what he is. He is what he is as a blocker, and really has. He's good out in space and always has been on the move and all like that. Heck, he'll take people and try to put them into the second row. But how many opportunities instances does he get to do that? If you're going to put him at the end of the line of scrimmage, he is what he is, and I think we kind of thought that about him coming out of college.
Yeah, I think largely. I mean, I think he's basically who he was in college, a sure-handed guy overall. I think Pittsburgh could still utilize him better, use him more downfield. They did that his second season, and then they kind of got away from that. So I still like to see him make some more plays down the seam and vertically, some more chances to do that. But yeah, I mean, he basically is who he is.
Right. All right. About Justin Fields, should the Steelers be rooting that they were right about letting him go?
Well, you don't want to root against Justin Fields to fail, but certainly if he succeeds and has a good year with the Jets and Pittsburgh's quarterback situation is ugly, let's assume that's the case as well, then Pittsburgh's going to take a lot of criticism for not pursuing and retaining Justin Fields. Absolutely. And anytime you let a guy leave and he has a great year somewhere, then you're going to feel heat for that.
Right. Now, look, how much in demand really was Justin Fields around the NFL anyway?
Well, to me, it doesn't really matter. He went to the
Right.
Jets. The Jets apparently offered him a better contract. Pittsburgh said, we'll see ya. And that's all that really matters.
What do you think about Justin Fields being, a top 15 quarterback in the league after his first year with the Jets?
If he becomes that,
Yeah.
are you asking what will be my reaction or
Yeah.
what is
Well,
the
I mean,
likelihood?
is there a possibility the Steelers regret this even after 1 year with the Jets?
Sure. If he has a good year with the Jets and Pittsburgh's quarterback situation, which already feels messy, continues down that track, and even if it's an okay year at quarterback, you still have no long-term option there. Yeah, there's potential for regret, absolutely.
All right. Let's see here. I think we already got this DeMarvin Leal one. Run with Rudolph. Given at OTAs, I think we already hit this one as well too, because we looked at Mason with the record. So I think we only had the one new email in here. So that's a perfect time. We're about an hour and a half into this thing. We'll see if we get more emails over the weekend here. Nothing happening on a Friday because OTAs this week are over with. We're getting close to June 1st. We'll see if anything happens after June the 1st. I'm not expecting Aaron Rodgers to sign anytime soon. I don't think you are either. So in the meantime, we'll try to keep people busy on the site at SteelersDepot.com over the weekend, won't we?
Yep, and then come back on Monday and talk about whatever there is to talk about.
All right. In the meantime, you can follow me on Twitter/X at Steelers Depot. Follow Alex at Alex_Kozora. Follow the show at Terrible Podcast. Email the show, theterriblepodcast@gmail.com. If you like what we do and want to donate to the cause, SteelersDepot.com. Hit the donate button. Also, if you like an ad-free version of the site, SteelersDepot.com. Hit the ad-free button. Follow the directions that way. We got an iOS app for the site if you want to go to the Apple Store and get that for free. Also, while you're at Apple, drop off a comment over there. Good, bad, ugly, indifferent, whatever. That's always good to see a couple of those show up every now and again. So until Monday, as always, thanks for listening to the Terrible Podcast with Dave and Alex.